I've gotten a lot of questions on how to make a circle skirt. Here's a video on how I make my circle skirt. Hopefully it can help answer any questions you may have. The things you'll need for this project are your material, thread to match, scissors, straight pins, measuring tape, and your pattern. I consider myself a sew-as-I-go type of person, so some of the techniques I use here today may not be correct, but hopefully they help you with your sewing adventure. For my skirt, I will need a waistband as well as interfacing for the back part where it separates, so I'm going to start out with making those two pieces first before I move on to the actual skirt. I like for my interfacing to be 3 to 4 inches wide and about 7 to 8 inches long. This is the part that goes on the back of the skirt again, so you can add a zipper if you'd like. Measure your waist for the waistband and add a few inches for seam allowance, and if you want your waistband to be adjustable, add a few extra inches for that as well so you can add some extra snaps. My material is folded over here, so I measured about 3 inches wide, so that way I have 1 additional inch for seam allowance, and my waistband ends up being about 2 inches wide. Make sure you use straight pins to keep your material together so that way you get a clean cut and your material doesn't start to shift. I'm going to go ahead and move into sewing these up so that way they can be out of the way. I'm going to start with the interfacing, and I sew a straight stitch around the edges minus one of the shorter sides because that's where I'll be cutting to make the slit for the back of the dress. After you finish sewing, tie up the edges so that way you don't have any loose threads coming out. Cut away the excess material so that way whenever you flip this inside out, you won't have any extra bulges. And then go ahead and flip it so that way you have a hidden seam on each side. This will also prevent fraying of the material on the inside. Moving on to sewing up the waistband, I actually only have to sew up 3 sides of my waistband because I used the edge of the material and folded it over. As you can see on the side that's closest to us, it is the fold, so I don't have to sew that side. If you did cut 2 separate pieces of material, then you will have to secure all 4 sides. As an alternative to an adjustable waistband with snaps, all you have to do is add some elastic in this one. Pro tip, cut out your own pattern on plastic tablecloth because it's much more durable than the paper patterns. I went ahead and cut out 1/4 of a circle skirt as well as 1/2 of a circle skirt so I could make a 3/4 circle skirt. When pinning your pattern in place on your material, make sure the material is not bubbling up under the pattern. This can cause mistakes when cutting. It's also a good idea to do this part on a hard floor, not carpet, and you need plenty of space so that way you're not limited and your material is getting bunched up because you only have so much space to work with. Since the pattern piece is so durable itself, I just fold it up all together and toss it over to the side while I work on the rest of my skirt pieces. Just a reminder to make sure that your material is flat up under the pattern, that way you can avoid any mistakes. It's also a good idea to check your material before you even start this project and release any wrinkles that are already in it. You can see some minor wrinkles in my material, but any larger wrinkles can sometimes cause you to mismeasure and you could possibly cut away material that you didn't intend on cutting. Be sure to be precise with your cutting. If you get lazy and start over-cutting past the material, then your skirt will end up being uneven when you go to pin and sew it together. After I have my skirt pieces, I'm going to pin them together at the seams and then go ahead and run a straight stitch down the seams, as well as a crisscross stitch to make sure that there's no additional fraying on the inside. After piecing the skirt pieces together, I move around the entire outside of the bottom of the skirt and run a zigzag stitch to make sure there's no fraying. If you have a serge machine, that's exactly what this part is for. I unfortunately don't have a serge machine yet, so I have to make do with what I have. Now we can finally move into putting the structure of the skirt together. You'll want to make a 6-inch cut down the back of the skirt at the waistline, as well as a 6-inch cut down the interfacing. Once we finally have this all together, it'll actually be more durable and it won't fray or pull or tear or anything like that when you're getting in and out of your skirt. You actually pin this piece to the outside of the skirt because once you sew it on, we'll flip it inside so that way it'll have a nice invisible seam. Since we already have our waistband cut and sewn, we can go ahead and pin that together. Make sure you pin the waistband facing down so that way whenever we stitch it, you'll flip the waistband up and that will have a nice invisible seam as well. I actually cut my skirt material to be a little wider at the waist so I could add a few pleats in the front. At this point, you're able to customize the waistband if you'd like, so you can make it a clean skirt all the way around or you can add a few pleats. Add elastic, a drawstring, eyelet hooks, snaps, buttons, whatever you'd like to secure the back of this skirt, and now you have your circle skirt. Again, I'm not a professional seamstress in any way. I'm just a girl with basic knowledge of sewing. If you do have questions regarding anything I did today, feel free to reach out. You can actually find measurements and formulas on how to make your own circle skirt pattern online, just like I did, but I hope this video helped.